Greetings, Jellyspoons, welcome back to another Monday Madness. This week I am going back to talking about the thing that I love the most in the entire world. And I am not sorry. Yes, of course, I am back on my Peter Pan content. I consider myself what I call a Peter Pan hobbyist. This means that I fell in love with the story since I was a child, have read and researched a great deal about it, have read all the different versions, gone back in history, have got many copies of the books. Some duplicates. And I wrote my dissertation on Peter Pan. And if you have spent any time on my channel before, you may have noticed that I do character dives, I do some stuff on TikTok as well, I talk about Peter Pan facts, the truth behind some of the things, some of the misconceptions people have, and I do also regrettably talk quite a lot about the adaptions, mostly complaining about them. Don't read it, I'm going to explain why. But that is not what I am going to do today. Today I'm going to do something ever so slightly different. Good stuff. What I want to do today is show you guys the Neverland. Like, really show it to you. I want to take you on a tour of the island and show you all the weird and wonderful things that happen there, the inhabitants, the creatures that live there, and talk a little bit about some of the adventures that have happened there, even the ones that you may not have heard of. I may also take a slight peek into the scarier, darker parts of the Neverland, but the true dark side of the Neverland is a whole video on its own. And I would quite like to do one actually, so let me know down in the comments below, would you like a full like 30-minute video going into the darkness of the Neverland? Like, not just those clickbait videos where it's like, oh, Peter Pan steals children, yet no, the actual dark story of the Neverland. The actual dark things that go on, the horrible, gruesome stuff. Like, would you like an actual video on that? Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think? Would you like a dark Neverland video? So, let's dive in and let me introduce you to the real Neverland. As always, you can support my chaos content by backing me on Patreon from $3 a month. You get photos of my dog, etc, etc. You get to tell me what to do and various things. You can join us on Discord where we hang out and chat. You can also support me on Ko-fi, and you can commission me to do personal character videos on Ko-fi as well. Alright, on with the video. Fun fact for you guys as I'm putting this up, the Neverland is actually also referred to as the NeverNeverland. And for a long time while Barry was writing, it was called the NeverNeverland. But that did seem a little bit too long, so it got shortened to just the Neverland. But essentially, it'd be canonically accurate to refer to it as any of those three things. Alright, so, to start with, I'm going to do some interactive content here, so I'm going to put the drink down. What I would like you guys to do, anyone who is watching this video, hi, hello, welcome. Close your eyes for me, alright? Close your eyes and listen to this quote. I'll do it too, alright? If you shut your eyes and are a lucky one, you may see at times a shapeless pool of lovely pale colours suspended in the darkness. Can you see it? Keep your eyes closed if you want to do the next bit, but if you are operating heavy machinery or driving, please don't do this, you reckless heathen. So everybody else, everyone who it is safe to do so, keep your eyes closed. J.M. Barrie says next that if you squeeze them a little tighter, the pool of colours starts to take on a shape. And if you squeeze them even tighter, are you doing it? If you squeeze them even tighter still, then the colours will suddenly start to be set on fire. And just before they do, you might see the lagoon on the Neverland. Did you see it? Were you one of the lucky ones? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, apart from being, in my opinion at least, a really beautiful and unusual way to set a scene and get your audience to join in, that is what brings us to the lagoon. That is where I will start this tour of the Neverland. You can open your eyes again now to anyone who joined in. I need more chocolate milk. The lagoon on the Neverland is a place of both peace and great activity, depending on the time of day. It is, of course, where all the mermaids live. Right at the bottom of the sandy floor, there are coral caves, which is where the mermaids' bedchambers are. Each one of them has a door with a little bell over the top, and this bell chimes and twinkles as the doors open and close. These bells are the last thing that Peter Pan hears when he's stood on Maruna's rock all alone, thinking he's about to die. But more on that, including the reasons why he could not fly or swim away, in the Dark Neverland video, should you want it. Tell me down in the comments below. We also meet the Neverbird floating in her nest upon this lagoon. You can find out more about her by checking out this video, bing, which I did about the most underrated character in the whole of the Neverland. Spoiler alert. It's the Neverbird. Seriously, she is in like no adaptions. The bird needs some screen time, damn. The Lost Boys like to spend a great deal of time at this lagoon. They lounge around on the rocks, they take naps, and they frolic and play in the water as well. They like to play with the rainbow-coloured bubbles which rise to the surface after there's been rain. Of course, the most prominent creatures on the lagoon are the mermaids, and it's often referred to as the Mermaid Lagoon. Though they are not very friendly towards anyone except Peter, the mermaids definitely do watch and observe the Lost Boys. Proof of this can be shown through John Darling. In his brief stint on the Neverland, while he was playing the bubble games with the Lost Boys, John Darling created a new way of hitting the bubbles. Most were hitting them with their hands, or the mermaids with their tails, but John started hitting the bubbles with his head. The mermaids, soon after, started copying this tactic, thus proving they do at least watch what the Lost Boys are doing. The fact that the mermaids do still use this tactic, particularly the goalkeepers when they're heading the bubbles, is the only mark that John Darling ever left on the Neverland. The mermaids can often be found leaping out of the water. If they have any excess scales, they shed them as they leap and dive back under the surface. These scales then drift on the tide, and if you were to touch one, they would stick to your skin. The mermaids themselves are very fast and very hard to catch. Lastly, before we move on from the lagoon and look at other areas of the Neverland, I would like to talk to you about Marooner's Rock. This, as Peter tells Wendy, is a frightfully important rock. Sailors are marooned when their captain leaves them there to drown. Their hands are tied so they cannot swim, and when the tide rises, the sailor meets their end. Captain James Hook actually tried to kill both Tiger Lily and Peter Pan on Marooner's Rock. More on that if you'd like to know about it in the Dark Neverland video. If you want that, chuck it down in the comments below. One final thing to know when you're picturing Marooner's Rock. There is a stave which was driven into the rock many, many years ago. A stave is like a sort of wooden long pole. Now this stave used to mark the spot of some buried treasure. But of course that treasure was discovered by Peter Pan and some Lost Boys a long time ago. The treasure is long since gone, but the stave remains. And at one point, it was where Starkey, who is one of the pirates, used to hang his hat. And that hat played a very key role in a twist of fate when the Neverbird came to Peter Pan's rescue. In a way, the island of the Neverland can only really be reached with permission. The directions that Peter gives to Wendy, second to the right and straight on till morning, as I say many times on various different platforms, that there is no star. It's not second star to the right and straight on till morning, it's just second to the right and straight on till morning. There is no star. Disney added the star, I still don't know why. Those directions were completely made up off the top of Peter's head. He just responded to Wendy, that was what came out. There is no way to truly alight on those magical shores without the Neverland looking out for you. 1,000,000 golden arrows shine and point down upon the Neverland as you draw closer. More about this in my video here, bink! What does Peter Pan look like? Where I explore how I think Peter is reflected in those golden rays of the sun. It does in fact say in the book that it reflects in his eyes as well, so check out that video up there. So there's 1,000,000 golden arrows shining down upon it. It's bright and colourful. The Neverland is described as being very colourful. Think of the colour that you saw if you closed your eyes earlier. That is seeing the island bang, as Peter would have put it. As you descend, you start to see some of the landmarks and signs of the inhabitants of the Neverland. There is the lagoon, of course, and there are sandy beaches where turtles bury their eggs. There are flamingos, one of whom had a broken leg and was tended to by John. There are caves, which Michael in particular liked to explore. There are woodlands and forests, loads of trees. There are wolves, there are lions, there are bears, and various other beasts of all manners and descriptions. And of course, there is the gigantic crocodile. She is a female, and at one point she swallowed a clock, which you can hear tick, tick, ticking inside her, until one fateful day, when the clock ran down. More on that in the Dark Neverland video if you want it. There is often smoke rising from an encampment. The people who live there are called the Pickaninny tribe. And I really want to talk about them because they are really, really awesome, but the language used to describe them is very typical of the early 1900s. That is to say, while probably okay intentioned at the time, fairly problematic to say now, if you catch my drift. So I'm going to avoid that by not really discussing them too much because, yeah, but what I do want to talk about is Tiger Lily. Now, Tiger Lily deserves a lot more attention and credit than she gets because she is legendary. Tiger Lily is the bravest of all of her I'm gonna go with group. Let's go with group for now. That sounds safest. All right, so Tiger Lily is the princess of her group and the bravest of them all. She's described as very beautiful, fierce in combat. She always travels at the back of the group, which is the place of the most danger. She can be elusive, she can be sweet, and she can be cold as ice. She also staves off the altar with a hatchet, which is just so cool. So yeah, I'm just a little bit of hype for Tiger Lily there. If you want to know more about Tiger Lily in a future video, chuck your comments down below and let me know, because I think Tiger Lily is goddamn awesome. That encampment is beside the mysterious river. There are many rivers that run through the Neverland. Several of them go through the caves as well. Kidd's Creek marks the mouth of the Pirate River, which is where the Jolly Roger once sat low in the water. Look at me double checking my sources. I think it's William Kidd, but I am gonna double check. I don't know where it is as well. One green light squinting over Kidd's Creek, which marked the mouth of the Pirate River. Where have you gone? Do you believe the fairies? Yep, the pirate ship. Here we go. Chapter 14, the pirate ship. One green light squinting over Kidd's Creek. Mouth of the Pirate River, Kidd's Creek. William Kidd, who was hanged on Execution Dock on May 23rd, 1701. Woo! I was correct. Kidd's Creek, named after William Kidd, who was a notorious pirate. I like it when I fact check myself and I'm correct. I do know the source material. Funnily enough, I do know what I'm on about when I'm talking about Peter Pan, you know? Most of the time, and I still go back and check. I hate people who don't check themselves. It's like, yeah, sure, you might know loads of stuff, but at least go and check your sources. And I do. I've got a pile. You can't see, but I have a pile of Peter Pan books. I have the annotated Peter Pan. I have my annotated Peter Pan. I have my notes from my thesis, my dissertation. I have my notes from just general entertainmentness. I have another book and another book and another book. I have the history of Peter Pan. I have the history of cinematic Peter Pan, which I don't need to use for this video, but it's still there. And of course I have the original play. So I need to get a second copy of the play actually, because I have written a lot of notes in that. The play is one of my favourite sources for Peter Pan because it was the original format in which it was performed, and there are loads of notes in one particular adaptation where you get loads of notes about why certain decisions were made in the play, and I love hearing about stuff like that. It also gives you information such as, here, have a free Peter Pan fact. Did you know that originally it was supposed to be Mrs. Darling, who was the joint role as Captain Hook, but eventually it was changed to be Mr. Darling, who also dual rolled as Captain Hook. Fun fact, there you go. I know what I'm talking about. It's Peter Pan. I just know, okay? There is also a deep sort of ravine place called Slightly Gulch, where in the midst of a battle, Peter Pan decided that he was switching sides. And then perhaps the most well-known landmark on the whole island is one of the Lost Boys' hideouts. This is the Home Under the Ground. Now, you may be imagining a large tree, which is sort of half right. The Lost Boys' hideout was, in fact, just under the ground. It was accessed by trees. It was accessed by a tree apiece. So in the time most of us have come to know about it, when Wendy, John and Michael came to visit the island, there were 7 hollow trees for the 6 Lost Boys and 1 for Peter to get down into the home under the ground. In the home under the ground, it's just one large room, a bit like one room of a bunny burrow. A tree did try to grow through this, but they weren't actually living inside of this tree. This tree would grow every day, and the Lost Boys would saw it back down level so that they could move around and then eat their dinner on it as well. This hideout, though, was of course abandoned, because Captain Hook and the pirates discovered its location, and then most of those children flew away home. Moving on to more of the inhabitants of the Neverland then, to continue painting you this sort of word picture. More inhabitants include gnomes, who are mostly tailors, an old lady with a hooked nose, the fairies, of course. Fun fact for you, the fairies, as I spoke about in my bing review of that book that I really hated. The fairies, coincidentally, the mauve ones are boys, the white ones are girls, and there are loads of other colours who just don't know what they are. Hands up if you can relate. Woo! So, representation. Just putting that out there, as far back as 1904 in the play of Peter Pan. Representation, all genders, just saying. Back to the inhabitants of the Neverland though. There are also princes with 6 older brothers whose stories are never fully explained, and I'm definitely going to go into that in some of my Peter Pan material that I am writing. There are of course the pirates, the Lost Boys, of whom there are many, and have been many over the years. Barry describes that the Lost Boys are children who were lost, not claimed within 7 days, and then sent to the Neverland. So Peter has had a band of Lost Boys for a long time. Their numbers change over the years as some of them die or get killed on the island, and sometimes Peter thins them out if they seem to be growing up. More on that in the Dark Neverland video. If you want to hear more about that, vote down in the comments below and let me know that you would like the Dark Neverland video where I can discuss the thinning out of the Lost Boys. There are visitors sometimes, such as Wendy, John and Michael, other children over the years, that's hinted as well, and then more mothers down the road, as is Wendy's daughter Jane, Jane's daughter Margaret, and so on and so on. And of course, the most prolific inhabitant of Neverland is Peter Pan. J.M. Barrie describes the Neverland as being snug and nicely crammed. He says that there is no tedious distance between one adventure and the next, and it is all over splashed with colour. All 4 seasons may pass in mere moments on the island, so it might be summer in the trees and on the lagoon, while also simultaneously being winter on the rivers, and so on and so forth as the island changes on. When Peter Pan is away from the Neverland, the island is usually fairly quiet. The beasts attend to their young, the fairies take an hour longer getting ready in the morning, and if the Lost Boys encounter any of their foes, the 2 groups merely bite their thumbs at one another and pass each other by. However, if you were to put your ear to the ground as Peter is returning, you would hear the whole island wake into life. Many different adventures have taken place on the Neverland, but very few of them ever really get put to screen, or even stage adaptations. To include all of them would be very difficult indeed, but this does mean that you don't often hear about many of them, even the ones that are the most popular. Here are some of the ones that you may not have heard of, starting off with The Flight to the Neverland. More about this if you would like to hear about it in the Dark Neverland video. What I will say is that the flight to the Neverland, for the Darling children at least, was very lonely and quite traumatic. We also have things like the pirates who baked a rich, damp cake to poison the Lost Boys with and left it at various points around the island trying to get them to eat it. Another adventure was when the Neverbird's nest fell out of the tree and landed in the lagoon, and Peter gave everyone strict instructions not to disturb the bird or her eggs. One of my favourite adventures is one night, Tinker Bell and some of her other fairy friends rolled the sleeping Wendy onto a giant leaf and tried to fly her back to the mainland. The plan would have worked, except as they were setting out over the ocean, the leaf broke, and Wendy landed in the water and swam back to the Neverland. You have more dark things as well, like Captain Hook killing several of his own men. More on that if you would like it in the Dark Peter Pan video. Another one of my absolute favourites, this is a total banger, is when Peter stood off against a pack of lions. He took an arrow and drew a circle around himself in the dirt and challenged any of them. He dared them to cross the circle. And none of them did. There was also an attack on the home under the ground. This was before the pirates found out where it was, so it wasn't the pirates who did this. But this group of attackers unfortunately got stuck trying to get down the hollow trees, and they had to be popped out of the top like corks from a bottle. And then we have the more commonly known adventures, the ones that are often put into the adaptions, if not all of them, sometimes usually 1 or 2. We start off with Tinker Bell tricking Tootles into shooting down the Wendy bird. Wendy was of course saved by Peter's acorn kiss that she wore around her neck. In a similar vein, we have the Mermaids attempting to drown Wendy. I have definitely seen this in at least 2 adaptions. 2003 movie. I think they did it in the Disney one as well, but I haven't seen that for a while. They definitely pull her and splash her. Yes, they say we were really trying to drown her. And I think in Peter Pan and the Pirates as well, I'm pretty sure someone tried to drown Wendy in that. So, those mermaids, huh? We also have the pirates trying to put Tiger Lily to death on Maroona's Rock. We have Hook fighting Peter Pan at Maroona's Rock. Peter nearly dying on Maroona's Rock. Peter and Wendy getting trapped on Maroona's Rock. Peter sending Wendy off on the kite from Maroona's Rock. And Peter very nearly really dying on Maroona's Rock. Then we have the pirates' very sneaky and very underhanded attack on Tiger Lily and her group of badasses while they were guarding the home under the ground. Through various trickery that was very morally not right, the pirates actually did get the upper hand and win that fight, tricking the Lost Boys into coming out and then kidnapping the Lost Boys, Wendy, John and Michael. We then have, of course, Captain Hook poisoning Peter's medicine cup, Tinker Bell drinking the medicine, Peter getting all the children to clap and save Tinker Bell's life, and then, of course, Peter Pan going off to rescue the Lost Boys, Wendy, John and Michael, and ultimately the demise of Captain Hook. The funny thing is that Peter Pan himself probably doesn't really remember most of this. And with that, Jellyspoons, we have reached the end of our Neverland tour. If you'd like to purchase anything from the gift shop, it is just over here. Otherwise, you can disembark and head off that way. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. If you'd like more Peter Pan content, you can check out my Neverland Watch playlist, which is on my channel. I am doing my 12 months of cosplay challenge at the moment. I am on month 9 of 12, so you can check out that playlist as well. I also have much more cosplay content, creations, Monday Madness, craziness, Critical Role, D&D, a bunch of different things, and of course random thoughts and chaos from my humble self. If you'd like to support me, please do so on Ko-fi and Patreon. If you can't do that, that's absolutely fine. Just chuck a like on this video and make sure you subscribe and get everyone you know to subscribe as well, because YouTube hates everyone. And if you have any questions about the Neverland or Peter Pan or anything, chuck it down in the comments below. I will be happy to try and answer as many as I possibly can. And of course, if you would like to see my Dark Neverland video, which I do have plans for, then chuck that down in the comments below too. Let me know what you would like. So ask me questions, tell me things, whatever you would like. Chuck anything you'd like down in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching my Jellyspoons. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye, Jellyspoons. Goodbye.